We've covered so much. The multidimensional self, probable selves, simultaneous time, framework 2. But I keep coming back to one question. What's the point? Why does consciousness bother with all this? What is the impulse underneath it all? And how do I know if I'm on the right path for me?
Value fulfillment is the yearning to enhance the quality of life as a fundamental desire in all life forms.
Wow. I mean, if we really just sit with that sentence for a second, from dreams, evolution, and value fulfillment, it kind of completely reorients this, this vast architecture of reality we've been mapping out.
It really does,
Okay.
because we spent this whole arc dissecting the mechanics.
Right. The structural stuff, the inner reality of framework 2, the probable realities.
Exactly, the nonlinear time, all the mechanics of the Seth Material channeled by Jane Roberts.
Yeah.
But those mechanics, they're really just the scaffolding.
Yeah, just the framework.
That quote, the one I just read, that's the engine. It's the absolute deepest impulse that's driving the entire cosmic machine.
So we are finally looking at the why behind the what, essentially.
Precisely. It is the ultimate driving force. And what makes today's deep dive so vital for you listening right now is that we are bridging the cosmic with the deeply personal.
Which is so needed, honestly, because it can get pretty abstract.
It can. So we are going to look at the massive scale of consciousness, but then we're going to distill it down to the most reliable compass you possess in your everyday life.
And that compass is what? Our joy.
Yes, your own organic, unforced joy. It turns out that this spark of delight you feel when you're truly engaged in something, it isn't just an emotional byproduct.
Okay, so it's not just like a nice bonus.
No, not at all. It is a profound biological and metaphysical signal.
I have to say, I find that to be a pretty radical departure from, well, the baseline narrative we are all taught growing up.
Oh, entirely.
Because if you look at the sheer scale of the universe, or honestly, even just the pressure of mapping out your own career, it is incredibly easy to feel paralyzed by it all.
Oh, yeah, the pressure is immense.
Right. Because the dominant operating system we are handed is it's traditional Darwinian biology. We're told the primary drive of life is just survival of the fittest.
Which is such a quantitative, almost defensive posture to take.
Exactly. It's like you exist to pass on genetic material and just avoid being eaten.
Literally or economically eaten.
Yeah, exactly. It paints this picture of a cold, competitive, claw and dagger universe where you just have to constantly fight for a tiny foothold.
And traditional evolutionary theory is incredibly mechanistic in that way. It completely strips intention and aesthetic desire right out of the equation.
Just blind mutation and survival.
Right. But Seth's teachings, they propose a reality that is fundamentally cooperative and expressive.
Cooperative. That's a huge shift.
It is. The primary drive of all consciousness is not mere survival. It is the innate, irrepressible urge to increase the quality and the meaning of that existence.
So it's about getting better, not just staying alive.
It's the drive to become more fully what you uniquely are, to add your specific, irreplaceable note to the fabric of reality. And that, fundamentally, is value fulfillment.
And the scale of this is just, it's mind-bending. Because Seth states unequivocally that this drive applies to literally everything.
Everything. Because consciousness has absolutely nothing to do with physical size.
Right. There's this specific concept in the sources that, it forces you to completely reevaluate the physical world. Seth explains that it would take a one-size globe to contain the consciousness of just one single microscopic cell.
I love that image so much.
It's insane, right? A world-sized globe. That suggests that a cell isn't just a biological brick in a wall. It is a universe of experience.
It's processing probabilities, making its own choices.
Exactly. Seeking its own miniature version of value fulfillment.
And when you begin to grasp that density of consciousness, you realize that every participant in reality, from a sprawling burning star to literally a single blade of grass, possesses this innate impulse to express its unique value.
It's not just us humans sitting around pondering our purpose.
Not at all. And we can understand this better if we look at a specific analogy Seth uses, which is this spider and its web.
Oh, yeah, the spider web analogy is fascinating.
Right, because in a mechanistic view, a spider is just a biological robot. It gets hungry, its code runs a little script, and it secretes silk to catch a fly.
Purely utilitarian, just a trap for food.
Exactly. But Seth frames it as an artistic, almost ecstatic expression.
Wait, ecstatic? Like the spider is enjoying it?
Yes. A spider spinning a web is an actualized artistic ideal. It means the spider appreciates its creation not just practically, but aesthetically.
That is wild. Even insects have an aesthetic sense.
They do. The spider experiences a literal ecstasy in expressing its unique capacity to weave that geometry into the physical world.
It shifts the entire paradigm. I mean, it means a flower isn't just blooming as some calculated strategy to attract a bee for pollination, right?
Right.
The expression of its colors, geometry, it's a joyful fulfillment of its own nature.
It completely transforms the universe from a sterile machine into this massive, multidimensional canvas of artistic expression.
A canvas of expression. I like that.
And if that is the fundamental nature of a spider or a cell or a star, it is absolutely the fundamental nature of you.
Because we're made of the exact same stuff.
Exactly. You are composed of that exact same conscious material. Your drive for value fulfillment is the organic unfolding of your inner self's purpose.
It operates way beneath the layers of, societal expectations.
Far beneath it. It has absolutely nothing to do with setting rigid intellectual goals or forcing yourself to climb a corporate ladder just because the culture around you dictates that as the metric of success.
But, I'm trying to map this onto the daily human experience for a second.
Sure, let's ground it.
If value fulfillment isn't a spreadsheet of 5-year goals, how do we track it? How do you listening actually know you're doing it?
Well, the sources suggest that organic curiosity, the deep joy you feel when engaged in something that makes you lose track of time, these aren't just hobbies.
They're not just distractions from the real work.
Exactly. They are literal biological signals. They are coordinates being transmitted from your inner self, pointing you directly toward your unique path.
They're the language of your inner reality. Framework 2, right?
Yes, Framework 2, communicating with your physical experience in Framework 1.
And when you honor those signals, you align with the momentum of your own multidimensional consciousness.
And the practical result of that alignment is a life that feels inherently meaningful. Your body and your psyche operate in a state of profound cooperation.
So the effort required to move forward feels natural, like a current carrying you, rather than a constant uphill battle.
That's the perfect way to put it.
But then, we look at the reality of modern life, and ignoring those signals is practically a prerequisite for adulthood.
Unfortunately, yes. It's built into the system.
We trade our natural, spontaneous joy for this massive list of societal shoulds. We take the job we hate because it offers a 401k, or we maintain relationships that drain us entirely out of a sense of obligation.
We shut off the natural autopilot and try to manually fly the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you attempt to manually fly the plane, you're essentially demanding that your conscious intellect take over functions it was never, ever designed to handle.
You're swimming against the current of your own biological and spiritual momentum.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The intellect becomes incredibly overworked trying to artificially manage every probability, every risk, every possible outcome.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And according to Seth's framework, this massive friction leads directly to a feeling of profound disconnection, apathy, physical fatigue, and eventually systemic illness.
Okay, but I'm struggling to square this entirely, though.
That part.
If spontaneous joy is the ultimate compass, how do we explain destructive impulses? Because we are taught from a very early age that our raw nature is fundamentally selfish. If I just follow my spontaneous urges, what stops me from becoming a glutton or an addict?
It's the classic fear of the uncontrolled self.
Yeah, a gambler might feel a massive surge of joy at the roulette table. How does Seth differentiate between a pure impulse and a destructive one without risking total chaos?
Well, that fear of chaos is really the bedrock of Western psychological and religious conditioning.
Right. Original sin, the id, all of that.
Exactly. It is the belief that human nature is fundamentally flawed, tainted, or dangerous, and must therefore be rigidly controlled by the intellect. But Seth vigorously refutes this.
Vigorously.
Oh, absolutely. He explains that spontaneity knows its own deep order. Think about the physical functioning of your body for a second.
Okay.
You do not have to consciously direct your heart to beat or manage the complex biochemistry of your white blood cells healing a cut, right?
I think like.
That is spontaneous biological order, and it is infinitely more sophisticated than anything your conscious intellect could ever orchestrate.
Right, the intellect shouldn't be the CEO of your physiology. It should be the administrative assistant.
I love that analogy.
If my intellect had to remember to beat my heart and digest my breakfast, I'd be dead before lunch because I got distracted by an email.
Exactly. And Seth extends that exact same principle of spontaneous order to our psychological impulses. Natural, unimpeded impulses are inherently cooperative and altruistic.
But what about the gambler or the addict?
Right. Regarding your point about the gambler or the addict, Seth explains that those are not natural impulses.
They're not.
No, those are distorted impulses. When natural impulses toward value fulfillment are consistently blocked, denied, or judged as evil by the intellect, the energy of those impulses backs up.
It's like damming a river.
Yes, it becomes pressurized and warps into destructive, compulsive behaviors. The addiction is actually a symptom of the natural impulse being violently suppressed.
Oh, wow. So the destruction isn't the impulse itself, it's the pressure from the suppression.
Exactly. True discipline, in Seth's view, is the natural result of true spontaneity. When you are acting out of your unblocked, joyful nature, your actions naturally and inevitably harmonize with the environment and with the people around you.
So my joy isn't selfish, it's my internal GPS.
Exactly. Seth says the spontaneous self knows exactly what to do. The conscious mind's job is to relax and follow the joy.
That requires a massive relinquishing of control, or at least the illusion of control.
It really does. It's a huge leap of faith for most of us.
It demands that we view the universe not as some hostile testing ground trying to prove our unworthiness, but as a deeply supportive medium designed to facilitate our expression.
Which is a beautiful way to see the world.
But we need to see this applied, because discussing the physics of consciousness can become incredibly abstract very quickly.
It can. We need a case study.
Right. And the most compelling evidence for this material isn't just the logic of the theory, it is the lived reality of the woman who channeled it.
Jane Roberts.
Yes, Jane Roberts. Her life serves as the ultimate case study, the literal living experiment of value fulfillment.
Her journey is essential to examine here, particularly because it beautifully illustrates how nonlinear and unconventional the path of value fulfillment truly is.
It wasn't a straight line at all.
Not even close. Jane didn't sit down one day with a grand strategic business plan to become a globally recognized psychic phenomenon or to author a library of esoteric philosophy.
She was a writer, right? She loved poetry.
Exactly. She had a deep organic curiosity about the nature of consciousness and reality.
But in the cultural climate of the 1960s, pursuing poetry and esoteric philosophy was highly impractical.
Totally.
There was no clear financial roadmap for it. But she followed the thread of her own curiosity regardless of the external expectations.
She leaned into a pure, playful impulse. That sheer joy and intellectual curiosity led her and her husband, Robert Butts, to experiment with a Ouija board one evening.
Just for fun, basically.
Right. It wasn't a desperate search for ultimate truth. It was an act of spontaneous play. Yet, that unimpeded impulse opened the doorway to the Seth personality.
And by simply honoring her intrinsic nature, she produced a body of work that has profoundly shifted how millions of people understand the architecture of reality.
Which brings us to the most difficult and perhaps the most instructive chapter of her life.
Yeah, this is the part that I think trips a lot of people up.
It does. If we study the introductory essays and notes provided by Robert Butts in Dreams, Evolution, and Value Fulfillment, as well as the deep explorations in the way toward health, we are confronted with a staggering paradox.
The physical decline.
Yes. Jane's later years were defined by severe, debilitating physical decline. She developed severe rheumatoid arthritis, an underactive thyroid, profound hearing loss, and she spent her final years essentially confined to a hospital bed.
It is the unavoidable question for anyone studying this material.
You have to ask it.
If she was actively channeling the ultimate truth about the nature of reality, the power of spontaneity, and the biological necessity of value fulfillment, why did her physical body deteriorate so immensely?
How do we reconcile the expansive philosophy with the contracted physical reality?
We have to dive into the deep mechanics of how our rigid beliefs interact with our biology.
Because Seth's own diagnosis of Jane's condition is a profound masterclass in the dangers of the overworked intellect.
He didn't hold back on analyzing it?
No, he didn't. Seth explained that Jane harbored a deeply embedded, almost calcified belief in what he termed the sinful self.
The sinful self. Now, we need to clarify that because it sounds very religious.
Yes, it is crucial to understand that in Jane's context, the sinful self wasn't tied to conventional religious dogma.
So she wasn't worried about going to hell.
Right. It manifested as a subconscious, impossibly perfect image of herself that she felt she absolutely had to embody.
A super perfect ego ideal.
Yes. As the Seth Material grew in popularity and scope, Jane felt a crushing weight of responsibility. She developed a rigid, superhuman ideal of how she should be handling the phenomena.
She subconsciously believed she had to save the world with this information.
And that any human failing on her part would invalidate the work.
So she took the natural, spontaneous joy of the channeling and suffocated it beneath a mountain of intellectual expectation.
She essentially put the administrative assistant in charge of the entire cosmic operation.
That's so tragic, really.
It is. That psychological bondage acted like wet concrete poured over her spontaneous self. Because her psychic abilities were opening up so rapidly, and the multidimensional nature of her consciousness was becoming so undeniable, her ego, her intellect became terrified.
It was too much, too fast.
Exactly. She developed a deep subconscious fear of going too far too fast. She feared losing control.
And here's where the metaphysical physics becomes incredibly literal.
Her body perfectly mirrored her psychological state.
The physical immobility, the severe stiffening of the joints in rheumatoid arthritis. It was adopted by her body as a protective mechanism.
It was a literal application of the brakes.
The intellect clamped down on the spontaneous expansion so violently that it locked her physical joints to prevent her from moving forward into the unknown.
The body absorbed the belief electromagnetically and manifested it physically.
It really demonstrates the terrifying power of the conscious mind when it attempts to usurp the role of the inner self.
But the true testament of Jane's life is what unfolded next.
Because it didn't just end with her giving up.
Not at all. Despite the massive psychological concrete and the physical devastation, her innate biological drive for value fulfillment refused to be extinguished.
Is that resilient?
When the slow suppression failed to stop the inner drive, her biology forced an absolute crisis.
The hospitalization.
Yes. Robert describes in his notes how that extreme physical crisis, the absolute vulnerability of the hospital environment, served as the hammer that finally shattered that rigid, superhuman ego image.
The super-perfect Jane could not survive the reality of needing help with basic bodily functions.
The intellectual armor cracked under the sheer pressure of physical reality.
And in the wake of that collapse, her more native, realistic, and spontaneous self reemerged.
Stripped of the need to be a flawless spiritual savior, she found a renewed clarity. Her focus narrowed back down to the pure expression of the work.
Even in those final years, navigating profound physical limitations from a hospital bed, she continued to dictate the material.
She continued to write, to explore the inner realities, to express her consciousness. She lived her value fulfillment right up to the final moments of her physical focus.
Her life forces us to understand that value fulfillment is not synonymous with flawless physical existence or a lack of struggle.
It's not a guarantee of perfect health or wealth.
Right. It is regardless of the physical limitations imposed by our own conflicting beliefs.
Jane's physical crisis proves that the intellect's grip will eventually break under the pressure of the soul's momentum.
But, we don't want to wait for a physical crisis to break our own rigid habits.
Definitely not.
So, how do we bypass the intellect safely today without ending up in a hospital bed? How do we navigate a world built on assembly line time and rigid expectations while still honoring our value fulfillment?
Seth addresses this precise dilemma in The Magical Approach.
Ah, the magical approach.
Yes, he introduces a framework for living that entirely shifts the burden of manifestation off the intellect. And we must define magic carefully here, as Seth uses it.
Yeah, because it has nothing to do with stage illusions or pulling rabbits out of hats.
Yeah. Or bypassing physical laws to make $1 million materialize out of thin air. Magic, in Seth's vocabulary, is simply nature unimpeded.
Nature unimpeded. That phrasing implies that the default state of reality is already miraculous and our only job is to stop obstructing it.
Precisely. The magical approach is the perspective of the natural person. It mirrors the instinctive, effortless behavior of an animal moving through its environment.
It doesn't second-guess every step.
Right. It relies on the fundamental metaphysical premise that the physical environment and the individual are uniquely and cooperatively suited to work together.
Meaning the universe isn't out to get you.
It demands the deep realization that you are couched in a safe universe that actively and intimately supports your psychological and biological growth, rather than a hostile universe you must constantly battle against.
It's the realization that you don't have to generate the current. You just have to drop your oars and let the current carry you.
Exactly.
But for someone whose intellect has been gripping the oars for 30 years, finding that current feels impossible.
It feels terrifying to let go.
This is where we can extract a highly actionable technique from the mechanics of the source material. We can call it the joy compass.
The joy compass. I love this part.
It is a method to bypass the exhausted intellect and tap directly into the spontaneous self.
It begins with a simple act of reflection, deliberately shifting your attention away from your problems and toward your innate signals.
Okay, so step one.
Step 1 requires you to look back over your recent past, perhaps the last week or month. Step 2 is to identify 3 distinct moments when you felt truly alive, deeply engaged, or completely at ease.
And we must emphasize that these are rarely cinematic, monumental events.
No, they are almost always the microscopic, easily discarded moments.
It might be the exact tactile sensation and smell of chopping garlic and dropping it into hot oil.
Yes. Or it might be a genuinely unexpected deep conversation with a stranger at a coffee shop.
It might be 10 minutes spent sketching on a notepad where the internal monologue simply went quiet.
You write those 3 moments down.
And then step 3 requires you to analyze those moments, not for their content, but for their underlying structure.
You ask yourself, what is the common thread here?
Is the theme a feeling of tactile creation? Is it deep, unforced connection? Is it the quiet observation of nature?
The answer to that question reveals the specific energetic signature of your unique value fulfillment.
It's like finding the breadcrumbs your inner self has been dropping for you while your intellect was busy panicking about the future.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And then step 4 is the integration.
You ask, how can I bring a microscopic fraction of that specific energetic signature into today?
Just today, not a 5-year plan.
Just one small, unimpeded impulse, and then you follow it.
And this is precisely where the intellect will attempt to reassert control.
Oh, 100%.
The moment you decide to spend 20 minutes sketching or walking in the woods, the intellect steps in as the harsh manager and says, how is walking in the woods going to pay the mortgage? How is sketching going to resolve the conflict in your career?
The intellect demands to see the entire 500-step blueprint of how this joy will logically result in financial or social security before it grants you permission to take step 1.
It wants to manage the how of the universe.
So what is the proper relationship here? If the spontaneous self is generating the impulse, what is the intellect actually supposed to be doing?
The intellect's proper function is to playfully assess and accept those spontaneous impulses and to act as a discerning filter to remove the debris of limiting cultural beliefs.
So it's a filter, not a generator.
Right. Its job is to recognize the negative programming, the thoughts that say, you are unworthy, or this is a waste of time, and gently discard them.
Going back to our earlier metaphor, the intellect isn't the CEO planning the trajectory of the company. It's the administrative assistant keeping the desk clear.
Exactly.
Its job isn't to plan the party. Its job is to keep the negative, restrictive beliefs from crashing the party so the spontaneous self can actually dance.
Yes. You leave the heavy lifting, the massively complex organization of probabilities and synchronicity to the inner self, to framework 2.
Framework 2 does the math.
The magical approach is to trust the spontaneous self and to follow its impulses with faith.
That requires training. I mean, we have spent decades practicing the suppression of our impulses, so we have to actively practice recognizing them again.
We do. We have to rebuild that muscle.
To that end, there is an ongoing practice drawn from these mechanics that you listening can integrate into your daily life this week. We call it the Joy Compass Log.
It utilizes the profound power of focused attention. The daily action is this. Every evening, take 1 minute to document a single moment from your day when you felt a spark of aliveness or unimpeded flow.
No matter how brief or seemingly inconsequential.
Even if the only moment of relief was the physical sensation of taking off your shoes after a long shift, you log it. You give it weight.
And at the end of the week, you review those moments to identify the emerging theme.
The metaphysical mechanism behind this exercise is incredibly powerful. That theme is the literal language of your psyche, pointing you directly toward your unique value fulfillment.
And once you identify it, you begin to consciously afford it more space in your daily reality.
And if we tie this back to the deeper physics of Seth's teachings, we get upon the concept that desire is action.
Desire is action. That's a core idea.
Yes. By simply noting these moments of joy, by aiming your conscious attention at them, you are doing far more than keeping a psychological diary.
You are actively altering your probability trajectory.
You are sending a clear, concentrated electromagnetic signal to framework 2, the inner reality, where all physical events are initially formed, stating that this specific frequency is what you choose to experience.
And framework two, acting on the cooperative nature of the universe, will effortlessly begin to arrange the physical circumstances, the synchronicities, and the encounters in framework one to bring more of that exact joy into your physical reality.
It represents the ultimate intended cooperation between the conscious mind and the inner self. You provide the joyful destination through your attention, and the vast mechanics of the universe provide the means of arrival.
Alara, this arc has changed how I see myself. I'm not just this body, this personality. I'm a vast, multidimensional being with probable selves, simultaneous lives, access to framework two, and an inner compass of joy. I feel bigger and more at home in myself.
That's the gift of the invisible self, Leo. You've glimpsed the larger you, and this is just the beginning. In future arcs, we'll explore dreams and projection, practical applications for daily life, and how Seth's teachings connect to other great wisdom traditions. But for now, trust your joy. Follow your impulses. You know more than you think you do.
Thank you for navigating this deep dive with us. The invitation now is to actually test this in the laboratory of your own life. Trust that inner compass, let your spontaneous self take the wheel, and observe the specific magic that begins to unfold in your environment.
As we conclude, there is one final lingering implication of value fulfillment to consider. We have focused heavily on your individual joy, your personal alignment, but we must remember the deeply cooperative, multidimensional nature of the realities Seth describes.
It's all connected.
Your existence does not occur in a vacuum. Because of the profound cellular cooperation across all levels of reality, your individual joy isn't merely a personal luxury.
It's actually a contribution.
Every single time you honor an impulse and follow your unique value fulfillment, you are literally, energetically adding to the value fulfillment of the entire human species and the planet itself.
That's huge.
Your personal joy is a structurally necessary ingredient in the ongoing creation of the universe. When you suppress your joy, the universe is fundamentally deprived of your specific, irreplaceable note in the symphony. By following what makes you come alive, you are participating in the most profound act of cosmic altruism possible.